Everybody, Paul Vaillancourt here, back with day 11 of the 30 Pitches in 30 Days project. Today's project is, again, another little seed of an idea that I've had for so long that I've never really been able to crack, but with the pressure of this endeavor on, I've been able to crack it sort of all the way to the end, and I think it's a full idea now. Basically, it is a sort of a horror movie in the vein of like a Friday the 13th, with like a villain that's like a Mike Myers, Jason Voorhees, sort of a super killer. In fact, that's the name of the pitch. It is Super Killer, and it goes a little bit like this. We open on a high school at night, and we see a super killer, this giant hulking mass of a person with long stringy hair sort of obscuring his face as he moves through the darkened hallways of the school, chasing down some kids and killing them one by one. It's actually pretty quick how it all happens. This is the final rush of this of this event. Finally, he corners one young woman in a corner of the in the corner of the school and forces her into the sort of herds her into the kitchen of the school, the cafeteria, and then into a freezer in the kitchen. This is really a dead end for her, an almost literal dead end. But at the very last second, she's able to pry free a bar of the freezer and spray this guy with like super cold Freon that keeps the freezer cold. And now it stuns him and slows him and slows him down enough for all of a sudden a SWAT team like piles in, and a bunch of guys sort of with great effort manage to bear him to the ground, overcome him, arrest him, and take him away. This is like unheard of. Like no one's arrested Mike Myers or Jason Voorhees. This is it. They have finally captured one of these super killer types. And this girl, Madeline Carlisle, she is the heroine. She's the last girl. She's alive. And we see like a quick montage of his trial, going to trial, on the list of his atrocities, how many people he's killed, and what sort of barbaric ways. Maddie's there, always in the courtroom, sort of in the back. She's kind of wants to see this thing all the way through to the end. They end up sentencing him to prison, and the judge is like, may God have mercy on your soul. But he's up for the death penalty, but through various things, we see headlines of him, like, of his death penalty sort of getting sort of put aside because of the change of laws and so. But basically and so he's just rotting away in prison. And we see that he's, again, more headlines and footage. We see that he's killing people in prison too. He's just like an irredeemable creature, force of evil. Cut to modern day. It's 10 years later. Maddie is older. She's in her 20s, mid-20s, late 20s, and she is now a reporter. And she was the news, and now she reports the news. She works for a newspaper of all things. What an old-timey profession, but that's what she does. And she gets, she's living a pretty good life. She's a well-respected reporter, but she also kind of still lives in the shadow of this event. And we see that as she's moving through her day, every once in a while, someone will say, "Aren't you that girl who," right? And she's like, yeah, I am. And she's not haunted by it, but it's clearly still unresolved, and she lives in the shadow of this thing. And so she's living a good life, but an unresolved life. And we see this sort of also in her home life, where she has this boyfriend who is a SWAT agent, not one of the original ones, one sort of more age appropriate. And they're talking, and we sort of find out that she has a book deal of her ordeal sort of in the offing, but she just can't finish this book. She's a reporter, she's a writer, she knows how to do all the pieces, but she just can't bring herself to finish the book for some reason. She has some sort of block. The next day at work, her editor calls her into his office and tells her that they're opening a brand new state-of-the-art supermax prison off the coast of California. It's on an old oil rig. It is sort of like the ocean is the moat around this. It's really not visible from shore, so it's like even if someone were to escape, like for what? They couldn't possibly swim to shore. It's literally impossible. And they're opening this Supermax prison, the Ronald Reagan Supermax prison, and they are transferring a bunch of prisoners there. And the star prisoner that they're transferring, of course, is this super killer, Simon. And and they're going to, the laws have changed back, and now they're going to execute him sort of in a weird way as part of the opening ceremonies and shakedown of this prison. He's going to get the electric chair out on that remote new prison. But the editor tells her he is sending Doug, who's another reporter. And we sort of see Doug, and Doug is sort of a mousy guy who really doesn't want to do this at all. He's like the crime reporter, but really reluctantly. He would really much rather be in food or entertainment, but somehow he's fallen into crime, maybe because he's so horrified by it that it's the visceral sort of nature of it comes across in his stories. But Maggie's outraged. She's like, what are you talking about? That's me. I'm this story. This is my life. I should be the one to go. And she demands to go. And she debates back and forth with her editor about this. And finally, she harangues him into saying yes, that she can go and cover this story, the opening of this prison and the final execution of Simon. And as she leaves the office, she's like, you knew I was going to say yes. Seems like, of course I did. And Doug's like, thank God, he's so relieved. He can't believe it. But when she gets home, she tells her SWAT team boyfriend what she's got in mind. And again, he's against it too. He's like, this is crazy. This is so much in your past. Why don't you just move on and let it go? She's like, can't move on. This will be the final piece of it. This will be me moving on. This will be my final resolution. I'm not doing this for him. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. To finally put an end, close the book on this chapter of my life and move on with my life. He knows that she's she's not going to be persuaded, and he can't control her. He's just her boyfriend after all. She is her own woman. So he reluctantly, says, great, I support you, and this kind of thing. Cut to Maddie getting out of a helicopter and heading out across the water. We see how far this prison really is from land. It's quite a fair way. Pardon me. Quite a fair way, and the chopper sort of is traveling over and with her in the chopper are a couple other reporters and a scientist who's sort of like going to help sort of run a test on some of the equipment there. And when they land on the top of this thing, it is just remote. It's just like a metal edifice, just like jutting up out of the ocean. It is a monument to technology and security and sparsity. And they land and they meet the warden, the chief guard, the guy who designed the place, like basically a who's who of all the people that are going to get killed later. We see them all here and sort of what their agendas are. And so they are, they sort of meet and they're getting like a tour of the prison. That's where we get to hear all about the prison, like what it's got going for it, why it's such a great thing, why they spent all this money converting this oil rig into a prison. And so finally the big event comes, and the big event is Simon's execution. They a bunch of people sort of come into this observation room, and Simon gets pulled into the room, or sort of escorted into the room by some guards. He is manacled hands and feet, still as giant and terrifying as ever. His 10 years in prison have done nothing to soften him in any way, shape, or form. And Maddie has a little bit of a gasping when she sees him of just like how terrifying he still is. It keys to one of the most sort of like formative experiences of her life, and she's older now, more experienced, and she sort of like steels herself against this primal terror that's welling up inside of her. And she's not the only one. Everyone in the room is sort of fighting this battle in their different ways, with bravado or with quiet, or everyone's fighting it in some different way, because they all on a sort of very primal level realize the distinction between predator and prey, and they know what they are in this equation. Simon is gigantic. He gets buckled down into this electric chair, and even as he's they're getting ready to throw the switch outside of this room, and outside in the ocean, a storm is whipping up, and it's starting to come closer and closer. We saw the very, very first fingers of it as the chopper was landing, but now it's really gained momentum and gained force, and it's turned into really a big thing, and it's bearing down on this prison, on this oil rig, in a very aggressive sort of way. It's like a giant creature of its own, and the oil rig is getting battered by water, but the scientists who designed it and the warden, they all believe, don't worry, this place is going to withstand it. This is not a delicate thing. This is designed to take this kind of weather. But it's building, and people are getting nervous, and they hear the thunder and the lightning outside as the storm builds, and they're just basically on a giant lightning rod. It's a giant metal structure in the middle of the ocean. But again, they are reassured that it's going to be okay. Simon gets buckled into his seat, and they ask him if he has any final words. He really, up till now, hasn't really spoken at all. It just grunts and growls. He's just a crazy animal. And they ask him if he has any final words, as is tradition, and he says, "Hello, Maddie." He knows that she's there. Her eyes go wide. She's like, holy shit, how does he know that I'm here? I made it one of the conditions that no one tell him this is for me, that I wanted to see him meet his end, but he knows somehow, and everyone's terrified. But then they throw the switch. But just as they throw the switch on him, the whole platform is hit by a gigantic lightning strike, and everything, all the high-tech security systems go out. This station, this prison, is now literally dead in the water. It is just there. All the lights are down. They go to emergency lights, emergency generators. It's automatic lockdown. All the prisoners are locked in their cells, and it's like, holy shit. And just as this happens, Simon takes the advantage, and boom, he breaks out of this chair, and all hell breaks loose. There's a super killer loose in this prison. And as we burst further into Act 2, we see that the whole sort of next piece is Simon tracking down Maddie, coming after her. He has his own resolution that he's craving. And Maddie and her small group of people around her, that is the head warden and the head guard and the scientists who designed this place, a few prisoners as well, a few prisoners who were sentenced to a supermax prison as well, a small group of them trying to make their way back to the command center to bring this prison back online, to reboot the whole prison. But meanwhile, Simon is after them like an animal on the trail, killing, leaving dead bodies in his wake all over the place. Then, meanwhile, at the same time, on shore, they get a message that this has happened, and one of the people who gets this message is Maddie's SWAT team boyfriend, and he makes his way down to the command center that's sort of supervising this from shore, and he is rip shit. He's like, how could this possibly happen? And then he immediately goes into problem-solving mode and tries to plan out a bunch of different rescue operations. But with the storm coming in, it's very hard. Boats can't get out there. The seas are too rough. Planes can't get out there. Helicopters can't get out there. They really are isolated, but he won't take no for an answer. He keeps digging and digging and pounding. And so the whole time, he's like trying to reach her by radio, and little snitches and snatches of their conversation get through the inclement weather. But she knows that he's on the case, and he knows bits and pieces of what she's up to. Simon is just tearing through this prison. Prisoners are coming out, and they see him maybe as like a savior, letting them all out of these cages. He manages to figure out how to open all of the cells. They think, yay, it's great, but then he kills a bunch of them, and they're like, oh no, this is the worst. And so Maddie and her group get to the command center, and they are able to bring a few of the systems back online, but not everything. This prison needed a bigger shakedown before they brought all these prisoners here. It is limping along now, barely better than it was. The head guard says what we need to do is we need to get to the armory, and we need to get some weapons to lock this place down, and mostly against Simon, and we can recruit some prisoners and guards and kind of pull everyone together to fight Simon. Amongst all of us, will be able to do it. So they now are moving towards the armory, and they are picking up prisoners along the way and sort of letting them know kind of what the deal is with Simon and what they need to be watching out for. And eventually they get to the armory, and they sort of arm up some of these prisoners. But some prisoners have already been in the armory, so they know that there's some armed prisoners already out there. they take their small army that they have amassed and they move out to the main yard in this open area where they think this is it. This is where we're going to make our stand. We'll see him coming from any angle, and we will have our army ready to fight back and subdue him. But Simon has another trick up his sleeve. He sees all the everything's wet, obviously, because it's raining. He grabs an electrical wire and he throws it down onto this main courtyard, this main metal courtyard, and basically kills almost their entire army. Maddie's now with a smaller group, some of the same people from before and some new people that have swapped out, but he kills like 50 people in one motion, and we see him triumphantly in a stroke of lightning, his silhouette up on top of this sort of parapet overseeing the yard, and he is at the height of his power. Every kill makes him stronger and more rabid and more vicious, and now he's just killed 50 people at once. He's the most powerful that he's ever been, and he's stalking after them. They know now that they are really in trouble, but then Maddie gets a message on the radio. Her SWAT team boyfriend says that he's tracked down a helicopter pilot that is a storm chaser, and he is ready, willing, and able to bring them out to the prison. So as Maddie and her friends now they have to make their way up to the uppermost deck where the heliport is, so that they can meet up with this chopper and get the hell off of this death trap. And so they start making their way. The only problem is that it is the topmost part, and if they get up there, sort of like going upstairs in a house, like if you get up there and you don't sort of escape, then you're stuck, because you've basically sort of gone to a one-way street. And so they realize that the risk is worth it. It's the only way that they're going to get off this place, so they make their way towards this. The chopper's flying out. It's insane choppy weather. The pilot is a grizzled old chopper pilot. He flew in the war. He's flown storm chasers things. To him, this is nothing. Everyone else is about to lose their lunch, including Maddie's SWAT team boyfriend, who has chartered this thing private, and they are making their way out there. They get closer and closer and closer until finally they can see the platform, and Maddie and her small cadre of people can see the helicopter coming in. It's closing in closer and closer. Its lights are visible now. They can almost see the people inside, when suddenly, off of the prison there, an RPG snakes out and explodes and destroys this helicopter, explodes it, and they are bathed in this golden fiery light, and that's it. That was their last hope. The chopper's gone, Maddie's boyfriend is gone, they're trapped, Simon's coming after them. What are we possibly gonna do? Then the guy who designed the place said that there's one way out. They have to go down this really thin, long, laddery tube down to the very bowels of this place, and they decide that that's where they're going to try to make their stand. It is basically the kitchen of the prison. It's already starting to bring back memories for Maddie. This is where she made her stand before, and she's grappling with her own fear, her own terror, this deja vu, this horrifying deja vu of what's come before and what's going to come next. But this is all they've got. So they climb down into the sort of the basement. They're underwater now, and it's they're in a part of the prison that's underwater. They're not underwater, and they're in this kitchen, and meanwhile Simon is tracking them, getting closer and closer and closer, and now he comes into the kitchen. It's full of like knives and meat cutters and cleavers and like all the sort of weapons, all the tools that an artist would need to perpetrate violence against another person. And he works his way through everyone in Maddie's core of people, and they're sacrificing themselves one after another, trying to sort of keep her alive and trying to sort of maneuver him, until finally he's killed everyone but Maddie. And he's followed her and pushed her, herded her prophetically into this giant walk-in freezer that they have. He's coming towards her. It's an exact replica of the previous encounter that they had. She grabs a tube and pulls it off the wall, but it's empty. It doesn't work. This part of the kitchen isn't up to spec yet, and she's done. She has basically no option. She's just pushing further and farther back against the wall. She's feeling that same sort of teenage terror that she felt before. And Simon is just about on top of her, just about to kill her when, boom, he gets like knocked sideways by a cleaver coming in that hits him in the shoulder and knocks him sideways. It's her SWAT team boyfriend. He was the one person that was able to survive this insane explosion and crash of this helicopter, and he's here to help her. He throws his cleaver. He knocks the guy aside. They scuffle for a moment, but he's no match. This is ridiculous. He just fell out of a helicopter, for God's sakes. And even though Simon's injured, it's not matched out. He basically breaks the boyfriend and throws him aside, and then he's coming for Maddie, and she has just enough time to maneuver herself and grab the switch and pull it, releasing this giant stove that was hanging from a chain being lowered into place, and it just comes down and crushes him. Oh my gosh. Her boyfriend, she runs to her boyfriend. He's thank you for saving me. And they embrace and they have a kiss. It's finally over. No, it's not. It's a horror movie, for God's sake. It's not over. Simon pushes the oven aside off of him. He's broken and battered, but motivated and animated by evil on the inside. And he's coming for Maggie and coming for her. Now, what's happened is, as the thing's fallen, it's also broken up all these gas lines, and Maggie grabs her boyfriend's lighter and lights it and throws it and engulfs Simon in flames. And this is really his end. He's burned to a crisp. We see Maddie and her boyfriend sort of pushed back against the wall, an exact replica of where she was alone before. The first one ended in ice, this one ends in fire. But now, seeing him burn, seeing this is his real final end, she knows, and we know, that she's going to be able to move on with the rest of her life. That, my friends, is Super Killer. I will see you tomorrow for day 12.